Sama-sama tayong pabangon muli.
How much did your candidate spend for the May 2022 elections? Well, an ad spending monitoring service claims more than 200 million pesos a day on political advertisements from February 8 to May 7. It's a splurge for a nation in the middle of hard times. But who were the biggest spenders? The answer in this episode of The Chiefs. Welcome to The Chiefs. Ako po si Robbie Alampay. With me via Zoom is Ami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star. Ami, happy Thursday.
Good evening. Happy Thursday.
Mukhang tayong dalawa lang muna. Ako na lang balitaan mo. Ano bang headline natin bukas?
Well, yung recommendation, naglabas na yung Joint Foreign Chamber saka yung mga big business groups ng wish list nila for the President's State of the Nation address. Medyo mahaba-haba. 24 key measures siya, na.
I mean, mukhang everybody's trying to gear up talaga for the SONA. That's on July 25, the first one for President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. What else are you following?
Well, yung topic natin ngayon, it's very interesting. Yung campaign spending, natitignan natin kung anong kalalabasan, if it will lead to reforms. Meron na mga nagsasuggest because of this study na mag-implement na ng law. Well, they have been proposed a long time ago actually, yung ibang proposals na yan.
Exactly. Bago natin iwan ang usapin ng naganap na eleksyon and move on to the state of the nation, let's tackle more this report by the Philippine Center for Investigative Journalism. Over 2 months after the elections, there is now this analysis of candidate spending. Let's crunch the numbers with Philippine Center for Investigative Journalism content head Carol Ilagan and Parish Pastoral Council for Responsible Voting Director Arwin Serrano. Welcome to the Chiefs, Dr. Serrano and Carol.
Good evening.
Good evening, Ami.
Magandang
Good
gabi.
evening, Robbie.
Good evening, Robbie and Ami.
Carol, let me start with you. But I don't want to go into the details muna, the rankings on who spent the most. I think by this time, some people are already seeing this on social media. Makikita rin naman nila yung mga rankings. I want to focus on what Ami was talking about to get us into a conversation about political reforms and, for example, and the realities of campaigning in the Philippines. Let me ask you, doon sa report na ginawa nyo, I think people have an idea of ano ang pwede nilang malaman on how the campaigns went. But you stress that this is still just initial findings. Ano ang hindi pa natin alam tungkol sa ad spending and sa campaign spending in general ng mga kandidato?
Malaki pa yung hindi natin alam because when we look at Nielsen data, this is just a peak, kumbaga tinitingnan lang natin yung political advertisements. But we know na yung actual spending naman, hindi lang yan all ads. Although we know malaking bahagi ang political advertisement, pero syempre meron pa yung groundwork during the campaign. So yan yung hindi pa natin nakikita. At maliban dyan, ang pag pinag-usapan kasi natin ng campaign finance, hindi lang yung expenses, but also the donations. So saan galing yung pera na ginamit ng ating mga kandidato during the campaign?
Okay, now in the meantime, sabi mo, hindi pa natin nakikita yung ibang bagay na yan. Is that to say na antay lang tayo, makikita rin natin yan? Or are there things na sa totoo lang with the current systems and with certain compliance rules, sa totoo lang, there are a lot of things na hindi na natin talaga malalaman?
Actually, dapat because ang ating mga kandidato noong June 9, they should have filed the Statement of Election Contributions and Expenditures or yung tinatawag na SOSE. So actually, in theory, dapat pwede na nating itong masilip from the Commission on Elections. Kaya lang ngayon, medyo may konting paghihintay sa bahagi ng COMELEC dahil may issue sa data privacy. So may mga kailangan daw pang i-redact bago ito masa publiko. So yun yung ating hinihintay and palagay namin, Robbie, marami tayong pwedeng makita dyan. Kasi yun, isa sa pagbabago ngayon, pwede nang mag-donate ang mga domestic corporations. So magandang makita yon kung sinong kumpanya ang nag-invest or tumaya sa ating mga kandidato.
Well, in the meantime, yung 200 million pesos daily, total yan, You're talking about the total of all the candidates. Tama ba yun?
Yung scope, Ami, noong 200 million per day. So this is indicative ad value. So we're looking at the national candidates kung saan sila nag-appear na ads. So from president, vice president, senator, and party list groups. So yung mga kandidato na yon. So national candidates. So the figure could be bigger. Kaya lang, i-remind ko lang din, because we're using Nielsen data. So this is based on published rate cards, meaning the actual amount could be lower dahil maaring, may
Discounted.
package or by law may discount tayo. But still, sa aming assessment, medyo malaking amount. Malaking
Sobrang
amount pa
laki.
rin ito.
Sobrang laki. Ano yung media na yan? So broadcasting, kasama na pa dyan ang social media?
Sa data na ito, hindi pa kasama ang social media. So that's TV, radio, print, and outdoor advertising. So hindi pa kasama yung social media.
Attorney Serrano, maybe first of all, clarify for everyone what the rules are and what ultimately should they be watching with these numbers and with these reports. How much can each candidate actually spend? And based on what's being reported and the analysis of PCIJ, yun naman talaga tanong ng mga tao eh. So sino dyan ang nag-overspend?
Well, sa totoo lang, Robbie and Ami, in the Omnibus Election Code, it's 1 peso and 50 centavos per voter. But in 1991, it was amended, Republic Act 7761, I think, wherein we already enumerated for president and vice president, it's 10 pesos per voter. If one does not have a party, let's say you're an independent candidate, then you're allowed to spend 5 pesos more. And then for political parties, you can only spend 5 pesos per voter, for a registered voter. And then for other candidates like local, it's 3 pesos per registered voter. But in actuality, we will never know if what they reported is true. And we don't know, what Carol have mentioned, that we don't know about the other donors. Let's say if I like that particular candidate, sabi ko, gagastosan ko to na sa sarili ko. Without telling that particular candidate that I spend a lot of money in support of his or her candidacy. So yan, hindi yan reported. Kaya nga, yung 210 million na expenses on a daily basis from the start of the February 8 official campaign period up to May 8 or May 9, talagang talagang mahirap talagang makita yung katotohanan doon.
And just to clarify that, Attorney Serrano and Ms.
Dr.
Ilagan,
Serrano po.
Dr. Serrano and Ms. Ilagan, because people will be seeing numbers in excess of 600 million pesos, di ba? I mean, if we're doing it right, dapat theoretically na bandang dyan lang yung cap ng mga spending nila. But people will be seeing numbers beyond 1 billion and so on, certainly well beyond 600 million. That explains it na essentially ang minonitor natin dito is there is the official spending as declared at the start of the actual election season, campaign season, and then you also monitored essentially unofficial spending prior to that. Tama po ba?
Yes, especially yung before. The moment that they have that intent to be a candidate, there are a lot of spending already. And then hindi pa kasama yan yung October deadline for the filing of candidacy. Hanggang sa dumating yung February 8, 2022, yung period na yan, napakaraming expenses yan na nag-splurge sila. Yung iba pa nga niyan, baka meron ng mga arrangement with various media entities na hindi siya covered for the actor reporting. Kasi yung actor reporting lang will start on February 8 at the start of the official campaign period. So it will never really be a truthful reporting of all the expenses. Plus the fact na everybody believes that whatever reports that they submit to COMELEC is not really the honest reporting. Kasi merong pa yung mga tinatago-tago para hindi siya lumagpas doon sa maximum allowable expenses.
Doctor, linawin ko rin lang wala ring cap on the number of people who can contribute to your campaign, di ba? Kasi ang sabi ng dalawa nating winners, President and Vice President, wala naman daw silang nilabas sa sarili nilang bulsa, no? And well, we can probably believe na talagang napakaraming nag-contribute sa kanila, pero nag-fundraising yung party nila. Siyempre, yung mga supporter nila, kanya-kanya din. Wala namang ganung cap, di ba?
Yes. In fact, pwede pang kumita, Ami.
Yes. Pero hindi siya bawal, di ba?
Hindi siya bawal. Kaya lang, mas maganda rin yan na nire-report siya as income para ang babayaran mo yung tax incurred for that particular gains.
So ano kayang magandang, well, maybe we can start talking kasi kulang tayo ng oras. Ano kaya mga pwedeng remedyo dito? Kasi kapag ganyan nakamahal ang kampanya natin, mga mayayaman na lang makakatakbo, di ba?
Yun na nga eh. Our election is really going up in terms of expenditures. Yung leveling of playing field, mukhang mukhang dream na lang yan. Pero we can still propose some reforms if our legislators are really intent to improve yung ating campaign finance with regards dun sa, let's say for example, yung ibalik natin yung reporting before the official campaign period. Tapos magbigay din sila ng report, let's say 1 month before election day. Hindi lang yung 30 days after election na parang deadline nila sa June 8 or 9, no? Dapat hindi lang ganon. Para sa gayon, nakikita rin ng tao kung sino yung mga gumagastos na ng malaki at saka saan nanggagaling yung gastos nila. Sino yung mga donors nila, dapat merong early reporting, hindi lang yung after the election reporting.
Yeah, but to that point, in Carol, the transparency and accountability, I imagine, goes way beyond candidates and the donors. Who are the other stakeholders? Who are the other players and the sectors na sa totoo lang are part of that information ecosystem, are part of the campaign ecosystem? Kayo sa PCIJ, alam ko, you follow the money. So another way to put it is, all the election spending, saan pa ba dumadalo yung pera na yan that may represent potential points and potential stakeholders who have to essentially cooperate if we're going to make everything more transparent?
That's right, Robbie. So malaki din yung responsibilidad ng mga contractors. So when we talk about contractors, ito yung maaring broadcast networks, mga printing services, for instance, or kung anumang ahensya or kumpanya ang nag-provide ng election service. So sila rin may responsibilidad sila to file report of contractors sa COMELEC. So this is 5 days after ma-deliver yung service. So mahalaga ito kasi this is a way for COMELEC to actually verify ano yung nire-report ng ating mga kandidato. Kasi essentially ang ating SOSE ay self-reporting. So kung wala yung third party na mga reports like yung report of contractors and let's say yun nga, you have sources like Nielsen, mahirap mag-verify. So mahirap yun nga i-check yung veracity ng reporting ng ating mga kandidato.
That would also cover what? Ad agencies, PR companies, and so on. But just to make it even more complicated, what about these social media platforms? They're outside of the country, Facebook, TikTok, Twitter, and so on. Major players right now. What about their accountability? And for that matter, what about individual content providers, yung mga tinatawag na influencers? I mean, lalong nagiging masalimot, alam ko. But obviously, these are big factors right now.
Covered din sila. So may responsibilidad rin silang mag-report. In fact, nakasaad yan sa resolution ng COMELEC for the May 2022 election. So just because maybe bagong development ito, not unlike the traditional platforms, may responsibilidad rin sila. Kaya lang the question is yun na nga, kung magsasubmit ba. So medyo kailangan ring tingnan natin yung COMELEC in terms of enforcing itong mga rules nila.
Dr. Serrano and Carol, how is that actually phrased in the rules, in the law, in terms of sino ang may obligation na mag-report?
Well, the candidate really is has the primary obligation to report of what he spend versus from what he received. But the problem is we will never know really who are the real companies or personalities that actually donated, and also the amount, because on both sides, they will never divulge such information. Kaya nga we really wanted sana to return doon sa previous law in terms of campaign finance, that they have to report before election day and not after election day. And then also, so if I may add, Ami, we also wanted to define also who are their who would be belonging to their campaign staff circle, because it's really very hard to know who are part of their campaign staff and who are not.
Well, apart from the campaign mismo, yung months before the campaign, hindi ba? I know there's a Supreme Court ruling about this. Pero hindi natin na-monitor yun, di ba? Yung spending before the filing of certificates of candidacy, hindi nasasama yan sa mga estimates na mga gastos. Malaki-laki na rin yan, di ba? What can be done to make that, to regulate kahit papano or to make it more transparent, yung ganyan, yung mga gastos sa ganyan?
Yeah, because of what was already stipulated in the Omnibus Election Code, before 1985, meron yun Ami. But after the passage of that Omnibus Election Code, yun na yung naging batayan ng COMELEC. It's 30 days after the election day. So kung May 9 yan, after 30 days, yan yung yung allowable time frame for candidates to give the presentation of
Carol, with all due respect, if essentially
receipts, data to veracity of the reports.
Carol, is there any word from the Data Privacy Commission kung covered nga yung mga campaign contributions ng Data Privacy Act? Kasi sinasabi ng mga kandidato, di ba, ayaw daw ng mga iba nilang donors na ma-disclose kung sino sila, yung kampanya nila, baka daw pag-initan, lalo na kapag natalo, di ba? Which is probably true, no? Kung natalo yun May katwiran nga na hindi disclosed.
Yeah.
Pero ano ba ang sabi ng Data Privacy Commission?
I think, Amy, yan yung common misconception. And in fact, even the Data Privacy Commission has already made a statement about this. Actually, in relation rin sa SALN, kasi yung ating data privacy law naman, hindi naman yan binuo na dapat ay mahirapan tayong kumuha ng public information. So, dapat malinaw yon. So, when we talk about campaign donation, so maaring may personal level nga, dahil it's coming from a private person. But you are participating in a public exercise, in an electoral exercise. So, dapat nasa publiko yan. So far naman, when we talk about redaction, ang nire-redact sa ating SOSE ay yung mga personal information like pirma, ID number, which maybe yun naman, reasonable naman, dahil yun nga, it's personal information. But again, that shouldn't prevent us from knowing magkano yung mga donations nila.
Ms. Ilagan and Dr. Serrano, with all due respect to this report, if essentially we all know that doesn't actually paint us an accurate picture, and in fact, habang binabasa natin to, umiiling tayong lahat dahil alam nating lahat na ito lang naman yung gusto nilang malaman natin at hindi naman talaga to yung katotohanan. Anong silbi nitong report?
Compliance.
Sa akin naman, Robbie, I'm looking at it mas long term. Kasi kung titingnan natin, malaki na yung pinagdaanan natin in terms of campaign finance reform. So kung ikukumpara natin yung sitwasyon now compared to maybe a decade ago, like before 2010, the situation is very different. Hindi mo makikita or mas mahirap kumuha ng information. So ngayon, I think kahit yun nga, it's still not the most ideal situation. This is what we have, and kumbaga sa atin naman, we still have to keep on reporting kung ano yung nandyan. So, yun. But again, I think this offers lessons for us, kung ano pa yung pwedeng gawin, ng mga stakeholders, including COMELEC, civil society, and even our political parties.
Dr. Serrano, as one thing and as big as a gap there still is in terms of our knowledge and the transparency, what's the impact of letting people know both the little that we know as well as what we still don't know?
Well, it's like this, Robbie. We really wanted our candidates to really present themselves as what they want to be as a public servant. But along the way, they cannot really help it but spend in order for them to really present themselves to the public. But one big problem also is so many items, so many things have already gone up in terms of prices, amount. So the bulk of their expenses really comes from the surge of the prices of certain things, Even yung mga TV spots, parang nagdoble yata or nagtriple kahit na nag-pandemic. So, and then even for newspaper, tumaas din talaga. Siguro Ami can attest to that, In fact, ang isa sa mga dapat din natin bantayan din kasi with the surge of technology, hindi rin ako magtataka na with these coming barangay and SK elections, most of our candidates for barangay will turn to different social media platforms and also be persuaded in those social media platforms. Kaya pati yung mga yan, magtataasan na rin yung mga rates niyan. Kaya talagang napakahirap talaga for the candidates to really cope up. Kaya yung iba diyan nag-under-reporting.
Okay. Dr. Serrano and Carol Ilagan of PCIJ. Maraming salamat po. Dr. Serrano is with PPC-RV. Maraming salamat po.
Maraming
Salamat din
salamat.
po.
And we'll start up another conversation after a quick break. Stay right there. The Chiefs will be right back. You're watching the Chiefs on One News. Joining us now via Zoom is Senator Sherwin Gatchalian. Good evening, Senator Win. Welcome back to the Chiefs.
Good evening, Robbie. Good evening, Ami.
Senator, before we do have some issues we want to discuss with you, but before we do, I don't know if you caught the earlier part of the program. We were talking about election spending and PPCRV, PCIJ, noting a lot of old issues, persistent issues, essentially having to deal with. We actually don't know how politicians are spending, overspending, I think safe to say. I mean, you're a politician, let's face it. You're a winning politician. But what is your own take on what can we do in terms of electoral reform and electoral finance reform?
Well, Robbie, I caught a little bit of the discussion earlier. And then on Twitter, I saw a little bit of the discussion by PCIJ. And I saw some numbers being flashed. And apparently, again, no, I haven't read the report of Nielsen's and PCIJ, but apparently the report of PCIJ came from the Nielsen's report. And from my information from our media buyer, because we all know that politicians, products, and companies, they don't go straight to the media companies, television and radio. They normally go through media buyers. And apparently, the Nielsen's report only flashed the rack rate of the ads,
published
as
rates.
well as the actual minutes for the ads. We all know nobody pays the rack rate. Discounts are given to special clients, to special media buyers, or even directly to companies and to advertisers. The discounts being given by television and radio, and I'm sure you know this because you guys are in media, vary depending on the relationship and depending on the capacity of the media buyer. So the report that I saw earlier on Twitter is the rack rate. But we don't know, personally, I don't know how much is the actual spending of the candidates. Because they might be, I'm very, very sure, I'm 101% sure they are given discounts, special rates, sometimes free minutes as a package. No?
Yeah.
So the numbers being flashed earlier is not accurate because we have to look at the SOSE, because the SOSE is the actual declaration of the candidates, and the actual declaration can be supported by the declaration from the TV and the radio stations themselves directly to COMELEC. So you have the receipts or from the candidates, then you have the minutes from the television, and then you put that together to reconcile the two numbers.
Fair enough. And we do have to say to the public, in fairness to PCIJ, when they presented this report, they were very, very clear on that. They did qualify it is possible that the spending is lower because this was based on published rates. But to that point, the other side to that is, as you said, we all know that media agencies offer discounts. But the other thing that nasasagit ng mga tao, but we also know that politicians were spending well before official election season. We also know that politicians have so many loopholes of going around this. And the second point is PCIJ having to deal, and journalists having to deal with published rates and essentially use assumptions is in itself an indicator, you would agree, that's for lack of transparency or that's for lack of access to verifiable information that we can work with. And sources are well and good, but these are also in the self-interest of the candidates, hindi po ba? I guess that's the question. Beyond the source, and particularly taking into account the reality that people know that politicians are spending, in fact, years in some cases before any election season, how do we bring reform there?
The SOSE is actually meant to regulate the spending of candidates. There is regulation in terms of ad spending and campaign spending for local candidates as well as for national candidates. And the SOSE will be an accurate measure on how much the candidate is spending during the campaign season. If I'm not mistaken, the SOSE is a public document, and the public can actually ask for the SOSE and its supporting documents. If I'm not mistaken, I think COMELEC releases the SOSE to individuals and to outfits who are interested in knowing how much a candidate spent. But having said that, I know what you're driving at, Robbie. No? The campaign season is defined by the Supreme Court. When does it start? And we all know that beyond the campaign season, candidates can go out and broadcast their accomplishments and what they have done. And there's a very thin line between telling the public what you have done and campaigning. This is actually a very tricky situation because for a candidate, I'm a candidate, and I'll be honest, I have to broadcast to my constituents, to our constituents, what I have done, or else our constituents will not know what advocacies and what laws you have passed. And I've been in public service for a long time, and it's very difficult for our constituents to track down what the candidates have done in the past. So the candidates normally, whether local or national, will try to broadcast, try to explain, try to tell our constituents what they have done in the past and what accomplishments they have done during their term.
Senator, in reality, really, it will really be very hard to come up with an accurate assessment of the expenditures in the past elections. Pero I think we can all agree na talagang naging mas mahal siya ngayon because you have the social media and there's the Supreme Court ruling na there's no such thing as premature campaigning.
Yeah.
So, ang tanong ko ngayon, you think there will be a willingness in the 19th Congress to pass campaign finance reforms? Kasi panahon pa ni Speaker De Venecia, pinapropose na to na magkaroon ng strict campaign caps na which can be monitored, regulated. You think for your own, hindi po para makatipid naman ng mga kandidato, you think it will enjoy support in the 19th Congress?
Well, I mean, the difference between the campaign period and the days prior to that is uttering the words, iboto mo kami, or vote for me.
Yeah.
Without those words, actually you can tell the public that you will do this and you have done this. But during the campaign period, you add, iboto mo kami or vote for us, then it becomes the campaign period. So there's really a very thin line when the campaign period, when the campaign period starts and how campaign period progresses. So having said that, there are many models that politicians and also experts are saying. For example, our country, ourselves, government will spend for campaign financing so that there'll be, first of all, equal footing between candidates who have the capability and those who don't. But reality will also say that it's very difficult for government to spend meaningful amounts for any candidate to campaign. So I think the best way forward here is to continue to regulate and make sure that the documents being submitted are authentic and validated. Candidates should be double-checked in terms of their submissions. For example, personally, I submit my SOSA and all the supporting documents, but it has to be validated so that we will know whether the expending are indeed accurate or not.
By way of legislation, what do you see, what measures can you see that might be doable, that might be passed by the 19th Congress? Kahit maliit lang, minor reforms. Kasi halimbawa, merong mga suggestion ngayon, bakit hindi bigyan ng equal time on all the multiple platforms, yung mga kahit man lang yung national candidates?
Yeah, actually, social media is the hardest to regulate, and the hardest to monitor. In fact, when we were planning for our social media campaign, we were actually threading very carefully on how to disclose and how to account for our social media campaign. For example, I'll give you a very specific example. We have supporters who actually pay, unknown supporters, who actually spend to advertise our works, advertise our accomplishments, but we don't know them. These are honest to goodness constituents who wants to help out a candidate. And actually, that became a very difficult monitoring for us because we don't want to be accused of using or circumventing the law by using dummies or by using other people to advertise for us. No? Social media is actually a very tricky medium to monitor. But then again, we have to come up with some regulation on how to track down social media and the likes.
Okay, Senator, let's go now to let's now look forward. The SONA coming up on July 25, 19th Congress about to convene. Some of the issues will be carried over from the 18th Congress to in particular, some of the issues that you're involved with. The Malampaya sale, for example, you've had your beef with former Energy Secretary Alfonso Cusi. Ano pong update doon? What do you see in that issue as it carries over, as you intend to carry it over in the 19th Congress?
Well, one good thing, Robbie, the incoming Energy Secretary is a well-known figure in the energy sector.
Mr. Lutilla.
Secretary Lutilla. And I have numerous times consulted with him issues regarding energy and power. And he's well-versed in the energy and power sector, not only in the legal front, but also in the technical front. And most importantly, his integrity is high and well-known in the industry. So having said that, we have a energy secretary who is honest and technically capable. And from my interactions with him, he's also an advocate of renewable energy and also energy security. And moving forward, that's one of the biggest challenge of the administration right now. We are all feeling the pinch of supply disruptions, of international price disruptions. Our country imports about 100% of its petroleum products. In the next few years, by 2024, when Malampaya runs out, we will be importing 100% of our natural gas. Definitely, that will have an impact on our energy security. So, moving forward, the administration have to put the foundations or lay down the foundations to improve our energy security and improve our energy self-sufficiency.
Well, another one of your proposals that has drawn attention is to impose a wealth tax. Of course, it has drawn attention because you come from one of the wealthiest families in the country.
No.
Can you tell us?
Not all.
Can you tell us more? Can you tell us more about your proposal? Ano yun? Anong covered niya? How much might it be? How much are you expecting to raise? And mamaya yung question na final, you think it will be supported by the members of Congress, many of whom belong to some of the richest families in the country?
Right. I can't discuss the details of this proposal yet, no, but I'll discuss the concept and my observation. And this is a work in progress that I'm working with the Senate lawyers and Senate tax experts. But basically, my observation is if you look at the Forbes billionaires list that comes out every year, the top 20, none of them are top taxpayers. Normally, the top taxpayers are media personalities, movie personalities, TV personalities, because they're high profile and it's easy to find them and to audit them. So, but a lot of the billionaires and the rich people of our country have very low salaries, but they have very high dividends. So we're looking at the other sources of income of our rich community or the billionaires of our country, and looking at whether those taxes being imposed in their dividends and other sources of income are equitable. Let me just put it in context, Amy. It's not about just taxing the rich. It's really contributing to nation building and implementing what the Constitution prescribes, which is progressivity. And basically, those who can afford to pay contribute higher to nation building, and those who can't contribute a little bit or contribute less to nation building. But everyone, whether you're rich or you're poor, has a responsibility to contribute to nation building.
So how much would be the rate, and what would be the base?
Robbie, we're still studying that carefully, but we're filing a bill on that. There's a bill right now on passive income, and dividends will be part of that provision. And right now we're still doing a lot of the computation, but basically the concept is there, no? And where the income or other income that is being derived by business people.
Is there any fear that you might chase away some of these business people? And what has been the experience in other societies? This is not going to be the first experiment. There are other societies, both from highly developed as well as to developing countries, on imposing a wealth tax. What has been the impact there?
Well, definitely it will be fair and equitable, Robbie. We're not penalizing. No, tax should not be a penalty to those who work hard and to those who make money. No, making money is perfectly legal, and that's your right if you earn profit. But definitely in the course of business, and if you are making more than our ordinary constituents, then progressivity will kick in, and that's where a bigger contribution will be mandated from you know, from the business people. And basically in other jurisdictions, they are also looking at taxes on non-essential goods, which basically are being consumed by the rich and those who can afford it. So we're also looking at taxing non-essential goods, for example, luxury items, for example, luxury watches, those things that are considered non-necessities.
So to reiterate my question, are you seeing support in the 19th Congress for a wealth tax?
If it's equitable and if it's for the common good, I can see that our senators and our lawmakers will support it. Especially at this time where fiscal space is actually a big issue. And what we're trying to do now here is increase revenue so that we have enough space to spend for important and basic necessities, no? Especially in times of high inflation, because when you have high inflation, subsidies are important, especially to the public transportation sector and to the marginalized sector.
But how much do you expect or target to actually raise? Given that let's say the top 1% of the population is actually so few that just the other night, Congresswoman Stella Kimbo was saying, sobrang konti nga ng sobrang yaman dito sa Pilipinas. We can actually afford to give them ayuda, and it will make a dent on a universal ayuda program.
Correct. In terms of number of individuals, definitely it's less than 2%, 3%. But in terms of amounts of dividends, then we're talking about a huge amount of number. No, that's why a lot of the people in the higher end of the society can afford to buy big houses, to buy land in posh villages, because they have income coming from their corporations and coming from other sources. And those are the things I'm looking at. Sorry, Robbie, I can't answer you directly right now. Again, it's a work in progress, and we want to make sure that our numbers are accurate before we release anything to the public.
Well, the joint opening session is approaching, and so far, mukhang dalawa pa rin yung natitira sa minority in the Senate. Should we be worried about this? Should people worry about a super majority in the Senate?
Well, I mean, from my experience in the Senate, when we talk about bills, when we talk about policies, we cross party lines and we cross, basically we cross the majority and the minority lines. And I've seen cases wherein the bills are sponsored by the majority, but the majority are the ones asking and debating on the bill itself. And in fact, some of our majority voted against those bills. So in other words, even within the Senate, even we have the majority and the minority groups, bills are being debated upon and being scrutinized upon by all members. And the reason for that is we want to make sure that the bills that come out of the Senate are well discussed, well debated, and we want to make sure that the bills have high impact to our constituents.
Are you hoping for any particular announcement from President Marcos? Any particular measure that you want to hear in his State of the Nation address?
But I mean, my expectation on the Senate, on the SONA, no, I'll divide it into three fronts, no, the short, the medium term, and the long term. I hopefully, the president will discuss some short-term issues that we need to address. For example, inflation. That's a big issue right now, and we cannot go to the medium term without navigating through the economic challenges that we are facing because of external factors. The medium term, we have to go back to pre-pandemic levels. This is the only way to reduce poverty levels in our country. As we all know, poverty is still the biggest issue of our country, and we need to go back to pre-pandemic levels in order for our poverty levels to go down. And then look the long term. We have to look at 10, 20 years down the horizon, making sure that we have a citizenry that can be gainfully employed in the next 10 years. And a citizenry that can respond to the requirements of industry.
Senator, the last major speech, of course, of President Marcos was his first speech at his inaugural. And people noted a few terms that were really warranted no mention at all. Human rights, analysts noted that it was thin on any reference to really foreign policy, no reference as well to China. But they said, okay, let's wait for the SONA, and maybe some details will emerge there. But corruption also was quite glaring. We usually hear, some statement about fighting corruption as one of the biggest endemic problems in the Philippines. Are you expecting any kind of statement or clearer direction or philosophy when it comes to fighting corruption, upholding human rights in this SONA?
Well, Robbie, in fairness to the president has mentioned in some of his interviews about upholding the arbitral ruling decision. No? And he has mentioned that it's a document that he will uphold, and it's a document that he will use as his guiding document for his foreign policy. I remember that he was interviewed about this, and that's a signal for us on how he will what direction he will take in terms of foreign policy in relation to the West Philippine Sea. As opposed to human rights and corruption, I hope that the president will talk about it coming SONA, especially corruption, which I am also I also mentioned in many of my interviews as the incoming Ways and Means chairman. One of the things that I want to look at is the corruption and abuses happening in our revenue collection agencies, making sure that we have the mechanisms for our constituents to report, mechanisms for our constituents to echo their grievances, and most importantly, holding our collection agencies to account if there are indeed abuses and corruption happening.
Okay, Senator Sherwin Gatchalian, we certainly will appreciate your insights after the SONA as well and heading into the 19th Congress. Sir, maraming salamat po.
Thank you, Robbie. Thank you, Annie.
And that's it for the Chiefs. We hope what was discussed will keep the conversation going. Mask on, wash hands, stay safe, Philippines. I'm Robbie Alampay.
I'm Mami Pamintuan of the Philippine Star.
And we are One News, all sides, all the time.